Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ISAS Facebook Live. We have with us today Dr. Ganeshan Wignaraja from Sri Lanka, who is with us today for a workshop organized by ISAS on the Indian Ocean economy and Sri Lanka's role in it. Welcome, Dr. Wignaraja. We wanted to speak to you today regarding Sri Lanka's involvement with the Indian Ocean economy. Now, with the growing importance of the Indian Ocean economy, what are the prospects regards to opportunities and challenges for Sri Lanka in this aspect?
So the Indian Ocean economy has been growing quite rapidly in recent years, particularly in terms of its maritime trade, which is projected to reach 190 TEUs, that is the measurement that's used in terms of container traffic, by 2020. Now that's a number that's up fourfold since the last 15 or 16 years. So that shows huge growth potential. On the other hand, that container traffic I mentioned has taken a hit since the global financial crisis of 2008-9. So the rates of growth have declined significantly. And this has also come through into other types of trade, services trade as well as general goods trade. So this economy, the Indian Ocean, is growing faster than the world economy, but the rates are slowing. Now what that really means is that there is greater competition amongst the regional ports for this traffic. And traditional ports like Singapore and Dubai, which have dominated this type of traffic, actually are growing slower than smaller ports like Colombo port, and interestingly some of the African ports,
Right.
As well as the ports in Bangladesh. So where Sri Lanka comes into this picture is that Colombo port has had major investments in recent years in terms of upgrading its terminal capacity, increasing its dredging depth to something like 20-25 meters, as well as its strategic location means it's become a transshipment hub. And Sri Lanka is also constructing a port city adjacent to Colombo port. And there is down the track the Hambantota port, which will come on stream, which will also be a major project. So Sri Lanka's port capacity will expand substantially, and we would have the potential for maritime trade-led growth in the country, which will provide an additional boost to the agricultural sector and the services sector, which are very important. So transshipment is very much on the horizon for Sri Lanka.
Right. Well, that sounds very promising. How successful would Sri Lanka's diplomatic initiative be to address maritime challenges, especially the model to work closely with South Asian nations?
So Sri Lanka has been heavily involved in promoting a rules-based international trading system. We were a founder member of the GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. We've also been a member of the World Trade Organization. And we've been very important in the Law of the Sea conferences. In fact, I think the UNCLOS 3 was chaired by Sri Lankan Sirli Amarasinghe. So in line with that, as a trading nation, we have wanted to look outward to encouraging discussions on rules-based trade in the region. Now, the problem with the Indian Ocean has been the increasing rise of non-traditional maritime threats. There's maritime crime, there's piracy, there's illegal and unregulated fishing, and we have some traditional threats that are posing on the horizon. The South China Sea story is very well known, particularly to you in Singapore, and we recently had this potential clash between a Chinese and a US destroyer, which came within 50 meters of each other. Now we want to try to avoid these types of issues in the Indian Ocean, and we want to try to get the major partners in the ocean, and there are 21 countries who are members of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, plus all the maritime users together, that is China, the US, Japan, Europe, and many others, to look at some of these issues in a very important manner. The reason for this, of course, is that the ocean is a major gateway of east-west trade.
Sure.
And we want to ensure that it remains a region and an ocean which has freedom of navigation, both in the sense of traditional trade along the sea route, but also increasingly the digital economy in a safeguarded manner. And to this end, Sri Lanka convened a major conference on the 11th and 12th of October aimed at sort of putting some of these issues on the table, the traditional and non-traditional threats, as well as wanted to begin a discussion, which will take some time, to get that conversation going forward with both maritime users as well as littoral states in the Indian Ocean. I think that's a very worthwhile effort.
I see. Well, these are all very remarkable and commendable initiatives, and in recent years, Sri Lanka has also been more proactive in pursuing FTAs with Asian economies, including Singapore more recently, as well as trying to attract more FDI. How does that all fit in now with the current political impasse in Sri Lanka? Does that impact any of the economic initiatives and credibility?
So, as a trading nation, Sri Lanka has typically been outward oriented since 1977, and we've had a very gradual reform strategy. Average tariffs in Sri Lanka are probably down to around 5-6%. We are fairly open to FDI with not that many restrictions. We concluded the FTA with Singapore a few months ago, and that was really a bid to try to get more linked up with East Asia, and Singapore seemed very much a natural trading hub, and the synergies between the two are very much there. What has happened is on October 26th, we've had a change of regime where President Sirisena essentially sacked the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and put in place a new Prime Minister, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. So we've had a sea change in the way that governance works in Sri Lanka. However, the underlying approach to the economic security of Sri Lanka and its foreign policy ambitions is unlikely to change, as we need foreign investment. We also need trade with East Asia. We need to have rules-based maneuvers, and we need to have very close relations with China as well as India and ASEAN.
Sure.
So I think it will take some time for us to come up with coherent approaches. We are now particularly worried about paying our debt for next year and the year after, where there's some bunching of the traditional debt. Our debt to GDP ratio is some 77%. And there are payments that are in excess of $1 billion annually down the track. So these will take some time to sort out, but I have no doubt that the Indian Ocean will come back into the fore as a policy goal of this small trading nation, Sri Lanka, and that the links with East Asia will expand and grow, particularly with Singapore. So some time more than we expected will be taken, but I have confidence that these relations will strengthen and go forward in a positive and constructive manner.
Great. Well, we're definitely positive and optimistic about that as well. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us, sir. Have a good one. Thank you.